He said it casually, almost carelessly, like it was just another preference on a long list. "I don't date widows," he laughed, stirring his coffee across the table. The woman froze for half a second, long enough for the past to rush back into her chest like a sudden storm. What happened next wasn't loud or dramatic. There were no raised voices or slammed doors. But within the next hour, one small moment of kindness would quietly turn his world upside down and teach him a lesson he never expected to learn. Before we begin, if you enjoy real-life inspired stories that remind us of compassion, empathy, and the quiet power of kindness, please take a moment to subscribe, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments. You're watching Heartfelt Moments, where small acts of humanity make a big difference. The blind date was Mark's idea. Well, his sister's idea, really. Mark was 35, successful, confident, and convinced he knew exactly what he wanted in life. A stable job, a comfortable apartment, and someone who fit neatly into his future plans. No complications. No heavy pasts. Sarah didn't know much about Mark when she agreed to the date. She had been hesitant, but after years of being alone, she told herself it was time to try again. She chose a simple blue dress that evening, brushed her hair back neatly, and looked at herself in the mirror longer than usual. Not out of vanity, but out of courage. The cafe was warm and familiar, filled with quiet conversations and the soft sound of cups clinking. At first, the date went smoothly. They talked about work, favorite movies, and places they'd traveled. Mark was charming, confident, and easy to talk to. Then the conversation shifted. "So," Mark said, leaning back in his chair, "what was your last relationship like?" Sarah took a breath. She had learned not to rush this part. "I was married," she said gently. "My husband passed away 3 years ago." Mark blinked, surprised. He hadn't expected that. He hesitated, then shrugged. "I'm sorry to hear that," he said quickly. "But I'll be honest, I don't date widows. Too much emotional baggage, you know?" He smiled as if he had said something practical, even reasonable. Sarah's fingers tightened around her cup. She didn't argue. She didn't lecture him. She simply nodded and said, "I understand. Thank you for being honest." Inside, though, it stung more than she expected. Not because he rejected her, but because of how easily he dismissed a life she had loved deeply. A life that had shaped her into who she was. The rest of the date passed politely but awkwardly. They finished their drinks, exchanged brief goodbyes, and went their separate ways. Sarah stepped outside into the cool evening air, blinking back tears she refused to let fall in public. A few minutes later, Mark walked toward his car, replaying the conversation in his mind. He felt slightly uneasy, but brushed it off. Better to be honest, he told himself. As he reached into his pocket for his keys, a sharp pain hit his chest. His breath caught. The world tilted. Mark stumbled, grabbing the side of the cafe wall. People walked past him, unsure, uncomfortable. Someone slowed down, then kept going. Mark slid to the ground, his vision blurring, fear rising fast. From across the street, Sarah saw him fall. She didn't hesitate. She dropped her purse, rushed toward him, and knelt beside him. "Hey, can you hear me?" she asked calmly, though her heart was pounding. She had been here before. Hospital rooms, emergencies, moments where staying calm mattered. She called 911 with steady hands, checked his breathing, and stayed right there with him. She spoke softly, reassuring him, holding his hand so he wouldn't feel alone while they waited. Mark looked up at her, struggling to speak. Recognition flickered in his eyes. "You," he whispered. "I'm here," Sarah said simply. The ambulance arrived quickly. As paramedics worked, Sarah stepped back, giving them space. One of them asked, "Are you family?" She paused. "No," she said. "Just someone who didn't want him to be alone." At the hospital, doctors confirmed Mark had suffered a mild heart attack. He was lucky, very lucky. As he lay in the hospital bed later that night, the events replayed over and over in his mind. The woman he had dismissed, the woman he labeled as too much. The woman who stayed when others walked past. The next morning, Sarah received a call from an unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Hi," Mark said quietly. "It's Mark, from last night. I just wanted to say thank you. You saved my life." She was silent for a moment. "You're welcome," she said. "I'm glad you're okay." There was a pause. "I owe you an apology too," he added. "For what I said. I didn't understand." I still don't fully, but I want to. They didn't rush into anything after that. No big romantic ending overnight. Instead, they talked. Slowly. Honestly. Mark listened to her story, her loss, her strength. For the first time, he saw that kindness isn't about someone's past. It's about their heart. Mark learned that love doesn't disappear when someone dies. It transforms. It deepens compassion. It teaches patience and empathy in ways nothing else can. Sarah learned something too, that her kindness was not weakness, and her past did not make her unworthy of new beginnings. Some months later, they sat in the same cafe, not as strangers, but as two people who had grown. Whatever the future held, they both knew one thing for sure: kindness has a way of coming back to us, sometimes as a lesson, sometimes as a second chance. So the next time you feel tempted to judge someone by their past, remember this story. Remember that behind every label is a human being, and behind every act of kindness is the power to change a life. If this story touched your heart, take a moment today to show kindness, especially when it's unexpected. You never know whose life you might change, or how it might change your own.